Until the lions have their own historians, the tales of the hunt will always glorify the hunter. Africa is facing 1,400 years of Arab-Muslim imperialism. After the West, the Arab world, is the second force that seeks to rule the black world. As long as the Arabs living in North Africa feel more attached to their racial brethren in the Middle East than to the rest of black Africa, we will have the duty and the right to defend ourselves against their racist attitude. These were the words of the master teacher, Cheikh Anta Diop, in his book, Alertes sous les tropiques. We will begin by laying down the bare truth regarding these so-called North African countries. Take a look at this map. The Arab League is an international organization that unites countries identifying themselves as Arab. It was founded by Gamal Abdel Nasser, the former president of Egypt, and a prominent advocate of Pan-Arabism. The headquarters of the Arab League are located in Egypt, a country with a rich history that holds significant relevance to many black African nations. The Arab League's influence extends beyond North Africa, reaching into other parts of the continent. In West Africa, Mauritania is a member, while in East Africa, Somalia and Djibouti are part of the League. Despite their predominantly black populations, Somalia and Djibouti are associated with Arab identity, largely due to the influence of Islam. The Arab League's presence is also felt near Central Africa, with Sudan being a member. This widespread membership underscores the cultural and political influence of the Arab world. Interestingly, about 3/4 of the land area of these Arab League states is actually located in Africa. This expansion of Arab influence into the African continent has significant implications. It has led to a gradual pushing of black African communities further south, reducing their living space and freedoms. In this video, we will expose how the growth of the Arab world in Africa is impacting the lives and liberties of black African populations, making it a matter of vital importance and concern. In April 1989, a tense situation unfolded between Senegal and Mauritania, leading to significant upheaval. The government of Mauritania, predominantly Arab Berber, used a border dispute as an opportunity to carry out widespread discrimination against its black citizens. Black Mauritanians, including government workers, military members, and private company employees, were unjustly arrested, and their identification documents were taken away. They were forcibly sent to neighboring countries, Senegal and Mali. The situation escalated as these actions spread to various towns, targeting ethnic groups like the Fulani, Wolof, and Soninka. Many Fulani living near the Senegal River in Mauritania were expelled by armed Arab Berbers. Their lands and homes were seized, and even their village names were changed to Arabic names. This tragic period, often referred to as ethnic cleansing, resulted in an estimated 120,000 to 200,000 black Mauritanians losing their homes, properties, and national identities, leading to a significant refugee crisis in Senegal that had long-lasting effects. Many Africans view this issue through the lens of a long history of enslavement since the Arabs' arrival on the continent. However, this situation also reflects a larger, more complex geopolitical dynamic of Arab-Muslim influence, which involves issues of territorial control, cultural identity, and human rights. Northwest Africa, including regions like Libya and Egypt, was originally inhabited by black populations. These early inhabitants of the Maghreb and the Sahara played a crucial role in developing Berber languages and culture. The Romans, who arrived in Africa later, referred to these people as Moors, a term they used to denote blacks. They named the region Mauritania, translating to Land of the Blacks, a term that influenced the modern name Mauritania. In the 6th century, Arab forces entered the continent, establishing their control over North Africa, including Egypt. They spread Islam throughout the region. Despite being in the minority, the Arabs allowed the Islamized Moors to govern the Maghreb. Later, from the 16th century, the Ottoman Turks expanded their empire from Egypt to the edges of Morocco. Starting from the 8th century, These Muslim rulers, particularly the Turks in later periods, engaged in the enslavement of both black populations south of the Sahara and some Moors, as well as millions of white European Christians, many of whom were Islamized. Over time, this led to a significant change in the demographic composition of the Maghreb. The region became predominantly mixed and white, with blacks becoming a minority. This shift was so pronounced that in Mauritania, a distinction was made between black Berbers and white Berbers, reflecting the diverse racial and cultural history of the region. The original meaning of the word Moor has faded over time. Historically, it referred to the indigenous black inhabitants of Northwest Africa. However, in modern times, some Arab Berber groups, who are predominantly white, have redefined the term to refer exclusively to themselves. They even claim that Mauritania, which historically meant land of the blacks, now signifies land of the Berber whites. This reinterpretation of language is a tactic used by these groups to assert their influence and dominance in Mauritania, a West African country. This situation highlights an ongoing, yet often overlooked, struggle between African and Arab Muslim influences in the region. In Mauritania, a minority group known as Beidanes, who are white and make up about 25% of the population, hold significant power, wealth, and privileges. The Arab Berbers in Mauritania have established a system where black Moors, known as Haratines, and nearly half the population, face severe discrimination and are often subjected to slavery. The remaining 25% of the population, comprised of black ethnic groups, like the Fulani, Wolof, and Soninka, also face discrimination and were targets of the 1989 ethnic cleansing aimed at reducing the black majority. Islam plays a crucial role in maintaining this power structure. The Arab Berber whites, partly of Arab origin, see themselves as divinely superior due to their Islamic faith. They believe they are inherently superior to black people, whom they consider to be of pagan origin and naturally destined for slavery. This belief is rooted in their interpretation of Islamic texts, with the expectation that Islamized blacks will accept this hierarchy as a divine will. Since Mauritania's independence, there has been an effort to align the country more closely with Arab Islamic identity, predominantly to benefit the Arab Berber whites. A similar situation is seen in neighboring Mali, where light-skinned Tuaregs in the north, who have also been involved in the Arab slave trade, face distrust from the black Malinka population and feel excluded from governance. These Tuaregs, who historically were black but have become lighter-skinned over time, often view darker-skinned Tuaregs and others as inferiors or slaves. This attitude led to fears among black Tuaregs of potential enslavement in an independent Tuareg state. Both in Mauritania and northern Mali, these dynamics are part of a broader pattern of racial hierarchy. This perception of blacks as natural slaves is deeply ingrained in some Arab and white Berber societies, to the extent that the term abid, slave, is commonly used to refer to black people. This mindset was reinforced during European colonization, particularly by the French and British, who promoted ideas of white supremacy and black inferiority in North Africa. This narrative overshadowed the history of white slavery in the region. As a result, many whites and mixed-race people in the region, some of whom are descendants of slaves, have adopted these racist attitudes. While they consider themselves inferior to European whites, they regard themselves as superior to blacks, often expressing this through overt violence and discrimination. This complex historical and social context has led to persistent racial tensions and inequalities. The so-called white peoples of North Africa do not consider themselves to be Africans and do not consider their countries to be part of Africa. Africa, for them, refers to the south of the Sahara and is something repulsive. In Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia, black populations face significant challenges. They often experience harassment, including insults and being spat on. In the media, they are typically portrayed in subservient roles, such as servants. In some cases, such as in Tunisia, they are even buried in segregated cemeteries. Furthermore, their historical contributions to the region are largely unrecognized or denied. The issue extends beyond religious differences to include an obsession with whiteness and the perceived superiority of lighter skin. Historically, in the 14th century, Arab invaders conquered northeastern Sudan, overthrowing its black Christian kingdoms. While the southern part of Sudan remained predominantly black, animist, and Christian, the western part was already Muslim. During British colonial rule, these distinct regions were unified into one country. Post-colonization, the Arab-majority government in Sudan sought to impose the Arabic language, Islam, and Sharia law throughout the country, aiming to control the oil-rich south. This drive for dominance led to prolonged civil wars between the northern and southern regions of Sudan, resulting in the death of 3 million people, widespread humanitarian crises in the south, and the enslavement of thousands of people considered idolatrous. It wasn't until 2011 that South Sudan gained independence, a significant event that symbolized the reclaiming of land and autonomy by African peoples. This history highlights the complex and often tumultuous relationship between different cultural and racial groups in these North African countries. In Sudan, black populations have faced significant challenges due to their exclusion from power and control over their resources by Arab groups. This tension escalated, particularly in the western region of Darfur. Beginning in 2003, the Arab-dominated government's response to protests and unrest in Darfur led to a tragic conflict, resulting in the deaths of approximately 300,000 people. This conflict, often labeled as genocide, was fueled by claims of ethnic and religious superiority by the Arab groups. The conflict in Darfur was justified by the Arab groups through a narrative of ethnic supremacy. In the south, the justification was rooted in religious supremacy. Fundamentalist interpretations of Islam, as understood by some groups, position it as the only valid religion, not recognizing the validity of other beliefs. This perspective led to the notion that non-Muslims, particularly those practicing traditional African spiritualities, should be converted or eliminated. This belief system views Africa, with its diverse spiritual traditions, as a land needing to be redeemed by Islam. In this context, Sudanese Arabs often claim to be the true representatives of Sudan. However, this claim overlooks the fact that the name Sudan itself is derived from the Arabic word for black, historically referring to the region's black inhabitants. This situation highlights the complex interplay of ethnicity, religion, and identity in the region, where historical and cultural narratives are often contested and used to justify political and social agendas. The history of Sudan and its connection to the ancient pharaonic era is a topic of debate. Some argue that closely linking Sudan to this history could validate the historical presence and contributions of black Africans in the region. This issue relates to broader concerns about historical accuracy. A significant event highlighting this debate was a UNESCO symposium in Cairo in 1974, where Arab Egyptologists and Western scholars, including Cheikh Anta Diop and Theophilo Benga, discussed the ethnic origins of the ancient Egyptians. The controversy revolves around a common belief in North Africa that black Africans are exclusively from sub-Saharan Africa and have historically been marginalized. Asserting that black Africans were the original inhabitants and key contributors to North African civilization suggests they have long-standing ties to the region. This perspective challenges some established historical narratives, which some believe are altered to diminish the role of black Africans. For instance, modern Tunisians rarely acknowledge the Carthaginians as black Africans, and it's uncommon for Moroccans to recognize the black African heritage of their imperial dynasties. Admitting such historical facts could potentially disrupt existing social structures and perspectives on land ownership in these regions. This situation exemplifies how altering historical narratives can influence current perceptions and social dynamics, particularly in the context of Africa's diverse cultural and ethnic heritage. The question of why black African nations often do not intervene in conflicts involving Arab-dominated countries in North Africa raises important issues. For example, there was little objection when Mohammed Ould Abdelaziz, an Arab Berber president from Mauritania, became the head of the African Union in 2014, despite concerns about the treatment of black populations in Mauritania. The proposed solutions for addressing the complex relationship between black African nations and Arab Muslim countries in North Africa involve several key steps. Recognizing distinct futures. It's suggested that there should be an acknowledgement of the separate paths of the Black and Arab Muslim worlds. This perspective argues that the African Union, in its current form, should be re-evaluated and possibly replaced with a union exclusively for Black states. The idea is that a union of only Black African states would be more effective, particularly in military terms, in addressing conflicts and challenges specific to these nations. Cultural and religious considerations. The proposal includes controlling the spread of Islam in Black African countries. The recommendation is to promote African vitalism, a concept championed by Cheikh Anta Diop, which emphasizes the celebration and glorification of Black identity and culture. The aim is to strengthen cultural identity and reduce the influence of foreign languages like Arabic, especially in countries like Chad, where Arabic is an official language. Historical accuracy, emphasizing the importance of historical truth about the primary presence and civilizing role of Black Africans throughout the continent, especially in North Africa, is seen as crucial. This approach focuses on asserting the historical claim of Black Africans to the entire continent, challenging narratives that minimize their contributions and presence, particularly in North Africa. Action against slavery. Specific measures are called for to address and end the practice of slavery in countries like Mauritania. This action is seen as a critical step in ensuring human rights and dignity for all Africans. These solutions highlight the need for a more unified and self-determined approach among Black African nations in addressing their unique historical, cultural, and geopolitical challenges.